Hey there to all my listeners joining me today. Welcome to Fractured Poet, a podcast for all of you poetically insane individuals who love getting lost in the art of poetry. Podcasting from Ontario, California, I am your host, Katrina Wisniewski, just another person in the world, obsessed with words, striving to make sense of it all. Today's episode is titled Thoughts in My Head. I chose this title because the 4 poems I'm going to read to you today tap into the thoughts in my head. That's not to say that all of the poems I have recited this far do not summarize any thoughts that I have in my head, but I guess you can say that these poems hit a soft spot. All of these poems expose real, accurate thoughts I have had floating in my head at one point or another. This first poem is called I Am. I am not what you think I am. I don't play senseless mind games or feed into other people's egos. I am not bothered by your intelligence, but rather your ignorance and your inability of being coherent. I am baffled by your shit talk and unimportant topics. I am more than just a flawed face with an imperfect body. I am a goddess of the fractured life I lead. You, a poor unfortunate soul with so many desires to annoy the living, I cringe at the thought of you, so pathetic and drawn out, it's exhausting. I must go now, but keep in mind, I am not what you created, nor am I your slave. I am simply me. After reading this poem, I can recall the exact moment I first came up with this piece. I was lying in bed trying to go to sleep, and suddenly I get a certain phrase pop up in my head. When I come across times like this, I have to immediately grab something to jot down whatever phrase I am thinking about. Otherwise, I will forget it. The closest thing to me at the time was my phone. So I grabbed my phone, opened up the notes app, and started typing whatever came out. And this was the result of that sporadic moment. Aside from how this poem came to be, this actually does have relevance to a particular time in my life. I began to question certain people's role in my life. I was given a rude awakening to who these individuals really were. Just an ongoing whirlpool of bullshit that, as the poem states, is nothing but mind games and elementary school behavior. I suddenly realized that some people never really do grow up. I could elaborate on this further, but I won't. I will move on to the next poem. This one does not have a title, so here it is. Ashamed by her appearance, embraced by the lack of beauty, just another Quasimodo to the world. Physically unacceptable to society, spending her life cowering away, hoping no one will take notice. Yearning to be a part of this world, to be like everyone else, only realizing that life has moved on without her. Tears streaming down her face as her thoughts go wild with wonder. Why can't I just be beautiful? Questioning her existence and her will to try, only wanting to have a peace of mind and the urge to be accepted. She is just another Quasimodo after all. This poem definitely strikes a vein. Not sure how many episodes back, but I do remember reading a poem that was somewhat similar to this one, and I mentioned that I was often the center of attention for most people, and it was not in a good way. This poem basically describes just that. As a kid, and even in the present day, people never let me forget the way I look. It's the first thing people notice, and it's always the first thing people verbally talk about. And it is usually coming from people that are strangers. Sometimes even people that I know that I wouldn't expect them to say something like that to me. But since childhood, I was constantly bullied and picked on, called names, and over the course of my life, it really screwed with my head. I literally have, sad to say, no self-confidence in myself, nor do I find myself even the slightest bit of attractive. People from the past and present have successfully torn me to pieces. I look into the mirror and I cannot see past that one thing people always tend to point out. I feel ashamed, embarrassed, and all I want to do is sink down deep and hide. Hopefully, people forget that I exist. I have sought out ways to change this one thing, but then reality hits. I could never afford to do something like that. And then the idea quickly fades away, knowing that I am just going to have to deal with it. I remember watching The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and my heart sank because I can sadly relate in some way. You want to go out into the world and be in the presence of people so bad that you can taste it. And once you get the courage, it's a huge slap in the face. People immediately swarm you and point out your flaws like you didn't already know, chasing you away. They never let you forget. Just shows you how fucking demented people can be. How much people or society thrive on looks. If you don't look this way or that way, you are officially dubbed unattractive and unacceptable to society. Another Quasimodo to the world. But off that depressing topic and how damaged I am, let's move on to the third poem. This one is pretty short and only 3 lines. Another poem without a title. To comprehend this life gives me a migraine. I need to find my way or be damned to the upside down. Should I even explain this poem? I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, don't you think? Life is, well, life just is. When life happens, it triggers so much crap, it's not even worth talking about. I am already an overthinker. I overanalyze things, and it's just no bueno. Dealing with all of the thoughts in my head, worrying about this, stressing about that, thinking of things in a hypothetical scenario, it literally gives me a headache. Something better give, or otherwise I might just find myself lost in an episode of Stranger Things, if you catch my drift. Alright, so this last poem is a haiku. I haven't recited a haiku poem since the start of this podcast, but in case some of you forgot, or those of you who don't know, haikus are poems that consist of 3 lines. It's a poem that originates from Japan, each line having specific number of syllables to them. The first line has 5 syllables, the second line has 7, and the third line goes back to 5 syllables. This one is called Stars of Her. She stares at the stars, wishing she was someone else. So many small stars. This poem was written back in April of 2017. After looking at the Word document this poem was typed up on, apparently this was a mood poem. Not entirely sure what I meant by that, but whatever. Stars of Her does not necessarily describe or define a particular moment or event, but it does reflect a portion of my thoughts. Sometimes I do wish I was someone else, for whatever reason that might be during the time of this thought. I think it would be pretty cool to be a star, looking down on the planet, shining however dull or bright seems fit, being lost in space, scattered every which way, hoping to one day be the cause of someone's wish coming true. And on that note, I think it's time to call it for today. To those of you who are always tuning in, and even those who are just joining in today, I hope you liked what you heard, and tune in next time. You can catch this and future episodes at anchor.fm/Fractured Poet. This episode of Fractured Poet was written and produced by me, Katrina Wisniewski. Music by Alternative Rock Volume 1 and Rock Electronica Volume 4 from a website called freeplaymusic.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Fractured Poet, And as always, thanks for listening, and until next time.